it is the Strauss Center's distinct pleasure to host a conversation with the Director of the Peace Corps, Mr. Aaron Williams. Today is the first day of annual Peace Corps Week, so we're particularly honored that its director is here with us at the University of Texas. On a personal note, I'm very honored to have the privilege of hosting this event. 30 years ago, serving as a tuberculosis control volunteer in rural South Korea, I never imagined that one day I would be introducing the director of the Peace Corps to an audience of future and former volunteers. But I'm doubly honored because the person that I'm introducing, Aaron Williams, also happens to be a dear friend and a respected colleague. The two of us served together in South Africa soon after the end of apartheid. He as the director of the U.S. Agency for International Development, and I as the Consul General in Johannesburg. Based on that personal knowledge, I can tell you with confidence that there is no one better to be running the Peace Corps, a program that in its intent and its grassroots execution is one that we should all be very proud of. Aaron's life has exemplified the Peace Corps' call to service to the United States, but just as importantly, to other countries and people around the globe whom we might be in a position to assist. He served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic from 1967 to 1970, first as a trainer of rural school teachers, and then as a professor of teaching methods at the university level. By all indications, Aaron must have been an exemplary volunteer in terms of engaging the local culture, because that's where he met his Dominican wife, Rosa.
That's not in my bio, is it?
In this bio. From 1970 to 1971, he was a coordinator of minority recruitment and a project evaluation officer for the Peace Corps in Chicago, which happens to be his hometown. Aaron subsequently pursued an impressive career in international assistance programs. He served for 22 years as a Foreign Service officer in the U.S. Agency for International Development, managing some of that organization's biggest missions and most important programs. Upon his retirement from the senior Foreign Service, he served as Executive Vice President of the International Youth Foundation. He then served for many years as Vice President for International Business Development with RTI International. And we found out, comparing notes last night at dinner, that we spent many months together in Iraq without even knowing it. As Aaron pointed out, that mission was so big that you could actually do that, which is virtually impossible at any other U.S. mission anywhere else in the world. So we were ships in the night at that point. Actually, now I'm disappointed that we hadn't seen each other while we were there to share notes. The list of Aaron Williams' organizational roles and affiliations is too long to recite here, which includes positions on the Obama-Biden transition team, the advisory board of the Ron Brown Scholar Program, and the board of directors of CARE, is equally reflective of his very clear commitment to leave the world a better place than he found it. And that, I think, pretty much sums up the Peace Corps ethos. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the director of the Peace Corps, Aaron Williams.
Well, first of all, thank you, University of Texas and Austin community, for the warm welcome that you've extended to me during my visit here today. And I want to thank Greg for that wonderful introduction. It's an honor to be sitting here next to Greg. We served together and did a lot of very innovative and meaningful things when we served in South Africa during the administration of President Nelson Mandela, which, as you can imagine, was a historic time to see the social transformation of the country under such great leadership. So we have a lot of really warm memories about our time together. And so when Greg asked me if I would come down to the University of Texas for the LBJ School, I said, of course. It took me about a nanosecond to accept his his invitation. So I want to thank you, Greg. And I want to thank the Robert Strauss Center at the University of Texas for hosting the Peace Corps today. And of course, Laura Jones has done a great job, the senior program coordinator at Strauss Center. And I am honored and privileged today to have here with us Admiral Bobbian, a distinguished American who served this country many, many years. The things that he has done, the contributions he has made is just awe-inspiring. And it's really a delight to meet you today, sir, and to see you here today. Thank you very much. Currently, the University of Texas is ranked 9th among the top colleges that contribute Peace Corps volunteers. You've got 67 volunteers now serving around the world. 17 of the University of Texas graduate students are currently serving, and Texas ranks #1 in terms of Peace Corps volunteers who leave graduate school and go out and serve around the world. So amazing. #1 in graduate students and #9 overall. So we have a long, positive, productive relationship with the University of Texas. Also, I understand, I was reading some of my Peace Corps history about the Peace Corps University of Texas, that the university served as a training ground for one of our first groups that left to go to Afghanistan. Now think about that for a minute, Afghanistan. We need to look forward to a day when we can return to a peaceful Afghanistan, and Peace Corps will once again serve in that country. It was one of our historic countries during the Kennedy Shriver years. I also want to acknowledge today is a special day for the Peace Corps. Today is Peace Corps Day. 49 years ago today, the Peace Corps was founded on March 1st, 1961, when President Kennedy signed an executive order establishing this agency. Return, current, and prospective Peace Corps volunteers and Peace Corps friends and family and staff will celebrate this week, March 1 through 7. Peace Corps is also rapidly approaching our 50th anniversary in 2011. It's right around the corner. And it's more important than ever before for returned Peace Corps volunteers to share their experience with neighbors, their friends, and their family. I encourage all members of the Peace Corps family to take part in Peace Corps Week and to help bring back that wonderful, rich, vibrant experience that we all have had who have served in the Peace Corps around the world. So it's a wonderful time to be here at the University of Texas. I'm so glad to be here with you to celebrate Peace Corps Week. I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Aaron. Just before we start, I'd like to do a little polling. Raise your hand if you are here tonight because you're interested in actually joining the Peace Corps. How many people are? That's a great show of hands. Wonderful. Okay, and then I think you know the campus Peace Corps recruiter has nobody's getting out. They locked all the doors. Raise your hands if you are returned Peace Corps volunteers. Fantastic. Wonderful. And all of the rest of you are very honored guests. We're glad to have you.
Or they have yet to serve in the Peace Corps.
That's right. I think we're locking the doors. We've identified you. Well, we thought that this is not going to be a hardball event. Maybe you've been to some Strauss events where we get our scholars and ask people tough questions, but it doesn't take much to figure out that a former Peace Corps volunteer interviewing friend and current Peace Corps director, hey Aaron, I'm going to throw you a hardball and here it comes. We'll try to keep this interesting, but if I don't ask tough enough questions or the questions that you're interested in, we are going to allow time at the end. There are microphones on both sides for you to ask Aaron questions. But I'm going to start with a series of questions. Aaron, next year the Peace Corps will celebrate its 50th anniversary. What do you think has been to date its greatest impact looking back on these years?
Well, Greg, Peace Corps is not the only volunteer service organization in the world. Many other countries have volunteer organizations, but as I have now reunited with the Peace Corps and traveled around the world since I've been appointed 6 months ago, I still find without a doubt that the Peace Corps, the United States Peace Corps, is the gold standard for service, for volunteer service around the world. There's no doubt about it. And what we continue to do is provide this unique opportunity for Americans to serve overseas. And I can't think of anything that would be more important now. In the 21st century, this shrinking global economy, it's important for us to know our neighbors around the world. And the Peace Corps is a perfect introduction, a bridge that Americans can cross to learn more about their neighbors. And at the same time, on a parallel basis, it's more important that people around the world know more about America, the true face of America that Peace Corps volunteers represent. In many towns and villages, I don't have to tell the people in this audience, you could very well be the only American that people in this town and village might meet in their lifetime. They form their impressions and their views of America based on what you do. So this still is very, very important, I think, for our country and for the world.
We're almost 50 years from the point at which the first volunteers went out to Ghana, I believe.
There's some debate about that, but I think Ghana wins by a nose. That's right.
I'm sticking with Ghana. I'm sticking with Ghana
That's
because
a
I
safe
served in
bet.
Togo, and we think we're number 2. But does the volunteer of today, the volunteers that you're doing, do they look like the volunteers of the 60s?
After I was appointed, I decided to go out and visit 4 countries very quickly to get a sense of the Peace Corps in the 21st century. And so I visited, you won't be surprised to hear this, the Dominican Republic. Can you imagine? I went to Nicaragua, I went to South Africa, I went to Thailand. And I noticed something very different about the volunteers of the 21st century. First of all, they are technologically very savvy. We didn't have cell phones when Greg and I served in the Peace Corps. But today they do. They can call home a couple of times a week. And it's not just that they're using the cell phone to communicate. They're using it to do more innovative things in the Peace Corps. For example, 2 really ingenious volunteers in Namibia, by using text messaging, set up a healthcare referral center to counsel young Namibians about HIV/AIDS, awareness and prevention, so that they could ask questions in a safe place that they could not find anywhere else in their society. They did that with very little investment. And now it's one of the biggest things going in Namibia. The Ministry of Health has embraced it. And the challenge for Peace Corps today is to have an IT platform that allows us to share this best practice worldwide to all of our 76 countries immediately. So that's one thing that has changed. But let me tell you something that has not changed. It hasn't changed at all in 50 years when you see volunteers speaking the 250 languages that we train in, 250 languages. When you see volunteers who are culturally sensitive, who understand the nuances of their society, are able to take on any challenge with patience, integrity, with perspectives that one would never imagine from the average person traveling through a country. That has not changed. They are culturally sensitive, they are linguistically talented, and they are accomplishing things in an innovative way, which makes all of us proud. These Americans that serve overseas in the Peace Corps, the 7,700 that serve in 76 countries around the world, are really accomplishing a lot at the grassroots community level.
Has the changing international security environment had an effect on volunteer safety and security and how you have to manage the Peace Corps?
Well, there's no doubt about it that in the post 9/11 world, we have to take the kinds of precautions and be very, very aware of where we can place volunteers. We have a very large, extensive safety and security staff, and we make sure that before we place a volunteer in a country or in a region of a country, that we do everything we can to make sure it's a safe place. But I think at the same time, the ultimate protection for the average volunteer continues to be the fact that the community where he or she is placed, they embrace that volunteer. They provide that security blanket because they become part of the fabric of that community, and it makes all the difference in the world. But we are very smart about how we identify sites for volunteers and how we place them. We have extensive communication networks. Of course, cell phones now make a big difference, right? And so probably the difference in terms of volunteer service today and maybe 2 decades ago is the fact that we had a lot more latitude to disappear. Now we don't like it to disappear.
Given that changing situation, have your recruiting numbers fluctuated over the years, either with changing security for other reasons? Is it easy or difficult for the Peace Corps to fill its target numbers?
Well, right now, we really are in a very good position. This is a wonderful time to be associated with the Peace Corps, and I'm honored and privileged that President Obama gave me the opportunity to serve in organizations that changed my life forever. It really opened up avenues that I never would have imagined growing up on the south side of Chicago. And it's extraordinary for a couple of reasons. First of all, we have a president who grew up in a developing country and who understands development and has issued a call to service for America. And Americans are responding. We've got 15,000 applications for 4,000 positions. Our applications are up 18%. So that's a very important and impressive statistic for Peace Corps. Secondly, we have extraordinary bipartisan support in Capitol Hill. Peace Corps continues to be favored by the Congress, so much so that this year we received a record historic budget this year. And so now we have the resources to actually support target measured growth. The other thing is, as I traveled to the countries after I was sworn in, I noticed that something else hadn't changed. Countries want to see Peace Corps. Everywhere I went, the ministers, the cabinet officials, the partners we have in the NGO community, they all talked about growing Peace Corps in their countries. Not a week goes by that a U.S. ambassador or an ambassador from one of the host countries where we work comes in and says, we want to either bring you back into our country, we want to grow your programs in the country. They're all behind the Peace Corps. It's really extraordinary. I told some people earlier today an interesting anecdote where about a month ago, the U.S. ambassador to Romania came to see me, and he had a very special friend who accompanied him. He had the Romanian ambassador to the United States. They came in to see me together and said, please grow the program in Romania because Peace Corps is an important partner in terms of economic development, economic growth, international development in Romania. So there's a lot of things that are very positive about Peace Corps at this point as we're on the cusp of our 50th anniversary, and so we have a lot of things in place that are going to allow us to really grow, and now we have the resources to do that.
And I would have to note, when I was the U.S. ambassador in Togo, Peace Corps was the only assistance program that we had in place in Togo because we had, along with the European Union, cut Togo off from assistance, regular development assistance in 1994. So for me, as the ambassador, the Peace Corps was golden. And I spent a lot of time traveling around the country highlighting their projects and things. So we're always very proud to be able to do that, because the work that the volunteers do in the field is something absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely.
You know, let me just add one other thing, Greg, also. And we're going to grow in a couple different ways. First of all, obviously, if you want to grow, you can move into new countries. And we've announced 2 new countries this year. We're going to go back to Sierra Leone, which was a historic Kennedy-era, tribe-era country. We're now back now to Peace Springs in Sierra Leone. And we're going back to another important country, Indonesia. The president announced a couple of months ago we're going to go back to Indonesia. When he arrives in Indonesia in a few weeks, we're going to have a Peace Corps contingent there to meet the president of the United States. So we're very pleased and proud about that. But actually, that's a slow way to grow the Peace Corps because it takes a lot of time and planning to identify new countries, come over to sites, etc. for Peace Corps volunteers. The fastest way we're going to grow is to increase, expand existing successful programs where we have country partners who are willing and able to take on more Peace Corps volunteers and where the volunteers have already been successful. So that's going to be our fastest way. We're going to come up with new interesting partnerships with the leading NGOs in the world that work in international development. We're going to work with the private sector, global corporations that work in development. We're going to look for partners that can help Peace Corps develop a platform and a bridge for growing in the 21st century.
I spend a lot of time here at the university talking to people who are interested either in the Foreign Service and or the Peace Corps. And one of the questions I get from people who are prospective volunteers is, to what extent is the Peace Corps a tool of U.S. foreign policy, and to the extent that it is, how does that affect individual service? And there's a nervousness about the question. People don't want to feel like they're a tool of U.S. foreign policy.
I bet there's a lot of people in this room who feel that way, right? Well, rest assured, the great thing about the Peace Corps, and I saw it on my trip to the countries I visited, and I hear it all the time from my staff. But by the way, 60% of the staff headquarters are returned Peace Corps volunteers. And those who are not always say they have yet to serve, so we're working on that. But in terms of your question, Greg, I think the most important thing that Peace Corps does now is that Peace Corps presents the true face of America. And we work side by side with people in their communities. They understand how we think. They understand why we're there. Our service is extraordinary. It makes a big difference. And I think in terms of the goodwill ambassador work that we do around the world, it makes all the difference for America. It's really important for America in the 21st century, without a doubt. And I think that's really the key baseline for Peace Corps that we continue to promote worldwide.
In the video that we just saw, you talk about the third goal of the Peace Corps. And I wonder if you can share your thoughts, the impact that now almost 200,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers have had and are having in the United States.
Well, now we've got 200,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers, like many of the people in this room, and you are leaders in all walks of life in our society, in medicine, in academia, in politics. We have 6 returned Peace Corps volunteers from Capitol Hill. In the Senate, we've got our great champion, Senator Chris Dodd. And by the way, they are vociferous, strong champions for Peace Corps, and have a lot to do, of course, with our new record level budget. There are people in all walks of life. For example, I often say that the president of Chicago Bears is a returned Peace Corps volunteer. The founder of Netflix is a returned Peace Corps volunteer. The former CEO of Kaiser Permanente is a former Peace Corps volunteer. The president of the University of Miami is a former Peace Corps volunteer. So we're all over, and we're contributing to our society. And what I want to do in terms of the third goal is to invest in trying to help you extend what you've learned and the richness that you bring to our society in your community. I think the third goal in probably the last decade has been somewhat neglected because of lack of budgetary resources. And I think it's important. We have valuable experiences. We have valuable skills and leadership ability that we need to use in our community. So I'm going to look for every way I can to extend and reach out to groups around the country that are engaged in the third goal. We're going to develop new domestic partnerships that will allow us to do that.
What special challenges for the Peace Corps do you see going into the 21st century?
Well, I think the world that we face now in Peace Corps is different from the world that Sergeant Travis faced. In one important aspect, and that is the Peace Corps started out as a fairly new and unique and innovative volunteer experience. Today, as you know, there are many, many ways for Americans to volunteer, both in terms of long-term volunteer experience and also many, many numerous short-term experiences. And I think, therefore, the challenge, one of the principal challenges for the Peace Corps is that we need to rise up and provide a competitive alternative and an opportunity for people to volunteer, for Americans to volunteer, of all age groups. You know, for example, our oldest volunteer in the world is a lady who's 85 years old. She's a rural health care worker in Morocco. She recently met Secretary Clinton when Secretary Clinton was in Morocco for a conference. I mean, pretty extraordinary. And so we need to provide these kinds of opportunities in the face of the competition that we now are receiving from many other organizations that are doing extraordinarily fine work around the world. So I think Peace Corps is going to have to step up. And the way to do that is to develop more partnerships, to develop stronger ties with universities, and to look for ways to be innovative in terms of designing and providing an opportunity for Americans to serve abroad. And so, as a matter of fact, one of the ways we're doing that is through Peace Corps Response. Peace Corps Response, many of you might know, is the crisis corps. And if we didn't have a Peace Corps Response that offers returned Peace Corps volunteers, experienced individuals, to serve for a short time in a country overseas, if we didn't have that, we'd have to invent it. For example, we're using Peace Corps Response volunteers to go back into Sierra Leone, because we need experienced people to arrive on the ground there. We're doing the same thing in Indonesia. And if we are fortunate enough to reopen our program in Haiti in the near term, we're going to use Peace Corps Response volunteers. I already have a roster, believe it or not, of 100 former Peace Corps volunteers who served in Haiti who are all fluent Haitian Creole speakers. They're ready to go.
So next year, we'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Peace Corps. Will there be a 100th anniversary of the Peace Corps? I'm not asking you if you'll be director of that.
There's a chance that I might not be director of that. There's an outside chance. I might not even be here for the celebrate, although I hope to. Oh, I'm certain there will be. There will be Peace Corps in the next 100 years. We're about to embark on the next 50 years of Peace Corps. And why do I believe that? Because, first of all, we need to reach out to our neighbors around the world, and Americans have demonstrated for 50 years that we're prepared to do that. And we're going to have even more effective, even more efficient ways of doing that as technology evolves, as ways for people to volunteer changes. I think that also the rest of the world is going to change, and they're going to want to interact with us in different ways. Let me just give you one example. When I traveled to Thailand, I met with the Thai Minister of International Cooperation. And so we sat down, and he said to me, he said, you know, I love the Peace Corps. And I said, well, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. And why is that? said, because when I was a young man, I had a Peace Corps volunteer who taught me. He said, so I want to do whatever I can to cooperate with the Peace Corps. Then he said, you know, Thailand is now a donor nation in Southeast Asia. And we have created a Thai Peace Corps, or a Thai volunteer corps. We would like to have a joint venture with the U.S. Peace Corps in Southeast Asia. Well, it didn't take me very long to tell them, of course, let's do that, let's have a joint venture, let's look for ways to work together in Southeast Asia. Many other countries where we serve in the Peace Corps are now forming their own national volunteer corps. And we want to be able to support that. Some countries want to see young people engage in service in their country. Peace Corps can provide guidance and support as they put together their own volunteer service. So I think there's going to be many more innovative ways for us to interact over the next 50 years that we can't even envision now. And Peace Corps, I hope, is going to be in the lead in terms of technological innovation to allow Americans to continue to serve in the 21st century. And I think it's just going to be a wonderful time for Peace Corps. And the people in this room represent the kind of spirit and imagination that made a difference. And I thank you for your service, and I really have enjoyed my time here at the University of Texas, and I look forward to your question.
Asking both of you to tell us what was the best day you had in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic, and you also, Greg. And what was the worst day?
What a great question. I think one of the best days, man, because I had many, many great days. But one of the best days was when I crossed the threshold and found myself more than finished, where I could sit back and relax and just let it all sink in. Where I could go to a meeting and where go to a meeting and understand the nuances of the discussion. So that was really the case. When I really thought I crossed the threshold, I was effective days. And then I had the great honor and opportunity in my third year in the Dominican Republic to teach at the university in the Dominican Republic, where I had taught all my classes in Spanish. So that was, for me, a lifetime breakthrough. The other thing I would say is that the day that was one of my worst days, but ended up being a really eye-opener for me, was when I sat down with my 50 teachers. I was a teacher trainer, and I was responsible for providing methodology classes for these teachers, rural school teachers in the Dominican Republic. When I realized that they were dependent on me to complete this program in 2 years, and I didn't know how I was going to do that. But I saw in their faces that they were depending on me, and I had to be committed to them, and I had to step up to the plate. And so even though it turned out to be one of the hardest days of my life there, it was also an eye-opener.
I think my best day was, believe it or not, in the middle of a snowstorm. Korea at that time might have been one of the only Peace Corps countries that, well, I guess if we were in Afghanistan, there was snow there too, but it's rare to have a cold Peace Corps country. We're in the middle of a snowstorm. I was a tuberculosis control worker, so periodically the X-ray truck would come down from the district, and it happened to come, and we headed out of the X-ray truck, and it started snowing, and we got pretty far away from anywhere. It really started snowing, and we got stuck. Koreans were very fashion conscious. And so I'm with all these Koreans who have, in this freezing cold weather, had these little coats, just suit coats on, and the young ladies had gloves with no fingers, lace gloves with no fingers. And here's the American Peace Corps volunteer looking like an astronaut in my down jacket. And they're all laughing. They started the day laughing at me. And we get stuck in the snow. And we wait and everybody tried to do a little pushing, nothing. And I asked the driver of the truck, I said, well, do you have snow chains for this truck? And he said, yes. And I said, well, maybe we could put them on. And he said, well, I don't know how. And I said, well, I know how. In Colorado, I know how to do this. And I started to jump down under the truck, and the director of the health unit was with us. He said, no, you can't do that. And I said, why? And he said, well, because you're a college-educated person. It's not dignified. So I'm trying to be culturally sensitive, and so we stand around long enough for me to get cold enough that I don't want to be culturally sensitive anymore. I just want the chains on the vehicle. And so I jumped down and put the chains on, and they're all kind of aghast. But I can tell you, when we were warmly back in the health center, I was sort of the hero for several days. And I think that sort of the example that's a big push. Of course, we do always have to try to observe the local culture and be sensitive where we can. We don't want to freeze in the process. But the point is, I think one of the greatest things we offer, we're not always, we're not out there building dams and roads and doing all this stuff, and sometimes we wonder, why are we out there at all? And I always thought that the greatest thing we offer is a spirit of public service and doing what it is you have to do. And that's a very American attitude. And I don't want to run it in anybody's face out there, but I did think that always saying, Eddie, let's do what we need to do to get the job done. So that was a very good day. I can say very definitely that the worst day was the day that the Peace Corps called and said my father had a heart attack. And that was hard. That's halfway around the world. And we didn't have something.
I'm really curious about the projects that you ran and created, managed, and all of that, and especially with the help of the people in host countries. And I'm really curious to know how those projects are doing maybe now, how long they ran, what sort of sustainability there were with the project.
What you did, fighting tuberculosis, was critical for Korean society.
I would say that my report's going to be an odd one. We were in Korea when the Peace Corps program, and I say we because my wife, sitting right back there, we joined the Peace Corps together. We were one of three couples.
Stand up, Marty. Stand up.
She's the we were one of the last groups in Korea. We actually had our service cut in half. And again, like I said, I think what we might have brought was just sort of an example of public service, but Korea already had a developed, established bureaucracy and program for fighting tuberculosis. And I think some of the things that some of the groups I thought did well in Korea, like fighting Hansen's disease, which is leprosy, which is a form of tuberculosis, were quite effective. But we did reach the point in that country where it was time to leave. I don't think that Korea has a high tuberculosis rate anymore. A whole bunches of reasons for that. I think that the work we did there was useful, but it's a little hard to say that I can directly relate it to.
In my case, I was a teacher trainer. We had two objectives in our program. Number one, to give the average rural school teacher in Dominican Republic had a fifth grade education, a high school education in 2 years. And to do that, they had to sacrifice all their summers and all their weekends, leave their families and move to a center away from their towns and villages. And the second thing was to go out and observe them as they taught to see if the methodologies that we were teaching were being used in the classroom. So I traveled by motorcycle and horseback and walked to see the 50 teachers that were part of our responsibility. And at the end of the 2-year period, the government was going to give them raises and give them the opportunity to move into a school closer to a large city. Well, the government, unfortunately, as often happens in the developing world, could not give them the additional money they had promised. And so we were heartbroken. We were just devastated. And so we were lamenting this whole thing with our teachers and talking about how we were sorry to have contributed to this sacrifice they made. It wasn't going to be responded to. And so they came up to us and told us something which another lesson in life. They said, we knew we weren't going to get the raise. We did it anyway. Because number one, you were committed to helping us. We have learned things that no one can take away from us. And one day in the future, we'll get the raise. We are better teachers for it. Dominican students are learning more because of that. And so we're happy that we did this. And I took a step back and I said to myself, my God, I've just learned something that very few people on this planet can learn from a group of people who I thought I was sent to help, and they've helped me.
Your talk about the creative partnership with other countries leads me to ask you about more of those kinds of creative partnerships. I'm with Strauss, an international organization, a United Nations NGO. And we let not only Peace Corps people, but anybody who wants to have homestay visits hosted by locals in one of the 140 countries, or any of the 140 countries, and vice versa. When people come here, we host them. And I'm wondering what you think about trying to use the cachet of the Peace Corps to make more visible some of the work of sibling and cousin organizations like ours.
Great question, and the answer is I want to look at ways to be innovative. For example, if we could partner with an organization like yours, obviously we need to learn more about each other, we could perhaps figure out a way to attract Americans to taking a short-term stint overseas in these 140 countries to learn more about living overseas and volunteering overseas that would then lead them down the path to becoming a Peace Corps volunteer. So you could help us, you could help you could give more Americans the opportunity to share this experience.
Great.
So something like that could work, and I'd be happy to have our folks talk to you about that.
We'll follow up.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
David Scheinman. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Himalayas of Nepal from 73, 74, 75. And then
Wow.
went to
You know this guy's stuff, right? This guy's stuff.
went to grad school. I was in Peace Corps, and I thought, wow, what a great way to make a living. Part of this is for the benefit of you people who are thinking of joining Peace Corps. Went to grad school, got a degree in international agriculture. Became a USAID contract employee in an ag project in 1980. Was an independent consultant and returned to the U.S. in 2004. So there is a future after Peace Corps. I worked with a lot of Peace Corps volunteers, and I want to congratulate you first on being our director and being a former volunteer. And second of all, the whole idea of partnership. I think we really need our directors in the country and the associate Peace Corps directors who go out and find Peace Corps posts to really look vigorously for partnerships that Peace Corps volunteers can piggyback on. Partnerships with resources. Because the one thing that Peace Corps volunteers lack are cars and vehicles, same thing, budgets. And in this day and age, particularly in Tanzania, when I was working professionally, villagers would say, what's this person doing here? He's really enthusiastic, but he doesn't have anything to work with. And in Nepal, it really didn't matter. I mean, again, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have anything, we had our enthusiasm. But there's so many projects going on in the world that could use the vitality and the intelligence and the capability of a Peace Corps volunteer. But in the field, and I've been in the field for 24 years, I think as the director, if you were to officially urge your APCDs to get out there and go to meetings and talk with the Dutch and the Danes, SNV, all of the volunteer agencies, German Development Service, GTZ, can you use some of our volunteers? Because Peace Corps seems to be somewhat proprietary. In other words, it has to be pure Peace Corps. And I think what you're saying is you want to veer away from that, and I think that's an absolutely excellent idea. And second of all, talking about future leaders, I was redoing the Peace Corps volunteer program as a consultant in Tanzania, and way out in the bush, my associate interviewed the local governor. He said, oh, I had a volunteer who taught me 25 years ago, can make him back. This will be just terrific. And I think politically, if you can play that card of the influence that Peace Corps volunteers, particularly teachers and others, have on the people that they interact with, because these are tomorrow's future leaders. In Tanzania, 5% of kids go to secondary school, 5%. And that's where our Peace Corps people are. So the people that they're teaching are going to be your cabinet ministers, possibly your president. And this is really key. So when you're in Washington and you're talking to people and you want to raise the budget, I mean, this is something that I think could, in terms of battling terrorism and everything like that, that to get in on the front lines, is where you have to start. Peace Corps. Thank you.
I started this by saying that I can't imagine anybody better suited to be leading our Peace Corps. And I think those of you return volunteers in the room know what I mean when I say our Peace Corps. Then Aaron Williams. I was pleased that Aaron was an old friend and had faith in him from our time together in South Africa, that in the day that we've spent here and hearing his ideas for the Peace Corps, the vigor that he brings to it, the purpose as a former volunteer that he brings to it. I'm more convinced than ever that our Peace Corps is very well served and is strong, and that we can expect great things from it. So,
Thank you, Greg.